Attention, this sign indicates prediabetes. In this video, I'm going to tell you about 8 signs and symptoms that can happen with this condition. It's called prediabetes, which is when you have changes in your blood sugar levels, in your blood glucose, but these changes aren't high enough yet for you to be diagnosed with diabetes. But it's an extremely important condition. I want you to pay close attention to these signs and symptoms because at this pre-diabetes stage, you already have an increased cardiovascular risk, a higher chance of having a stroke or even a heart attack, higher than people who don't have this condition. So pay close attention to these 8 signs and symptoms. But then you might be asking yourself, what is prediabetes? I'm going to explain it to you in a very straightforward way. We can diagnose prediabetes through 3 different tests. And it's always important to point out that this test should be repeated on more than one occasion. The first test is fasting blood glucose, which you do at the lab. You take the test after fasting, usually between 8 and 12 hours, and then you get your result. For this test, prediabetes is indicated when your glucose level is between 100 and 125 milligrams per deciliter. This is considered the prediabetes stage. I'll also provide the reference in millimoles per liter. A lot of countries use that reference, so I always like to also include what you can see there along with this image I'm showing here. The other test used for diagnosis is the oral glucose tolerance test. That's the test where you check your blood sugar after fasting, then you drink 75 grams of glucose, and after 2 hours, you have your blood drawn again. And then in this 2-hour test, after you've already taken the glucose, the prediabetes value will be between 140 milligrams per deciliter and 199. That's the prediabetes stage. And the third method, which is also widely used, is the glycated hemoglobin test, which reflects the average blood sugar levels over the past 90 days. And the prediabetes value will be from 5.7% up to 6.4%. These are the tests that provide the diagnosis of prediabetes. You've already seen that there are a lot of consequences. Now, what are the signs and symptoms? It's worth noting that these signs and symptoms will be different from the signs and symptoms of diabetes, which I've already talked about here on the channel. That's why you'll notice a lot of differences. Why is that? Because when your blood sugar levels are high, you might get really thirsty, you might have to go to the bathroom a lot, you could even lose weight, lose some pounds, and have more skin infections, like urinary tract infections, because your kidneys are getting rid of sugar. But prediabetes is trickier. That's because the signs and symptoms tend to be more subtle. That's why this video is so important. So let's get into the 8 signs and symptoms. The first sign is a change in your skin called acanthosis nigricans. I'll put a picture up here. It'll make it easier to explain. This noticeably darkened patch of skin has a much deeper color, appearing mostly within the skin folds, specifically in areas like your armpits, your elbows, and the groin. But right now, I really want to highlight the appearance of the armpits here. Oh, and it's important, it can also show up on the neck, okay? This is extremely important and is a very strong indicator of insulin resistance. We know that the pathophysiology, how the disease develops, also happens in type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance, that's the foundation of the disease. So with acanthosis nigricans, this change here, it's mandatory to get blood sugar tests to check your blood sugar levels. This change here, in rarer conditions, can also happen with tumors of the esophagus, for example. Other, even rarer diseases as well. They can also present with acanthosis nigricans. But diabetes is much, much more common, and here it's essential to check blood sugar levels. The second sign, and this one is the most common of all, is excessive fatigue, feeling tired. There are studies suggesting that 80% of people diagnosed with prediabetes will report excessive fatigue or tiredness. So, if you're feeling more tired than usual, it's also essential to get your blood sugar levels checked because you can catch it early, right? And you have a much better chance of reversing it. The third sign, and this one is also really interesting, is increased hunger. When there's a change in the glucose mechanism and insulin production, you often end up with excess insulin. Well, the thing is, it starts to stop working properly. That's why it's called insulin resistance. It's not that you don't have insulin or aren't producing it, like in type 1 diabetes. No, you do produce it. It's just that your body doesn't use it the right way. This can affect your appetite, and a lot of people report this increased hunger. I don't have the exact statistics, just like I mentioned before. Or I also talk about other things, other signs and symptoms. This is very subjective here. It's really hard to assess this too. But hunger is one of the symptoms that people report. The fourth sign is skin tags. I'll put a picture up here too. They're these little warts. It's basically, let's say, excess skin. You've definitely seen this on someone before. They're common. They're also called soft fibromas, but they're skin tags. This change here also calls for checking your blood sugar levels. There are other causes too, like genetic ones, but prediabetes will increase the frequency of skin tags or soft fibromas. Uh, Sign number five, and this one is pretty interesting, is reactive hypoglycemia. What is that, and why does it happen at this prediabetes stage? Why? Isn't prediabetes about having higher blood sugar levels? So why am I talking about hypoglycemia? Which means levels lower than 70 milligrams per deciliter. Why? When you eat a meal with carbohydrates, especially refined carbs with a high glycemic index, the pancreas, it might already be increasing insulin production, just like I explained earlier. When you eat those carbs, the pancreas can ramp up even more, which can cause hypoglycemia after that meal. This suggests that you might already have some kind of alteration, okay? So if you eat, especially here, carbohydrates, sugars, and a while later you experience shaking, cold sweats, or mental confusion, this suggests that you might have an issue with your blood sugar levels. You should get that checked out too, okay? Sign number six, and this one is really common, all right? It's not exactly a specific symptom, but since it's extremely common, I made a point to include it in this video, which is fat in the liver, or fatty liver, because these are metabolic changes that often go hand in hand. Just so you understand, it's actually very common. Having a fatty liver is another concern. Break time equals 0.5s// if you've been diagnosed with this condition. You really need to regularly monitor your blood glucose levels. Break time equals 0.5s// sign number 7, and this one is quite fascinating and noteworthy as well, is a noticeable increase in the breakout of pimples, or acne, in medical terms. Also, changes in the menstrual cycle and changes in hair. But how so? The increase in insulin levels, the production of insulin, this increase can also have an effect on the ovaries, especially in women. So, in the ovaries, it can stimulate the production of certain hormones that will cause this. This can cause that menstrual irregularity and worsening of polycystic ovary syndrome. For those who have it, you also start to understand other diseases as well. And also a hormonal change that leads to hair loss and increased acne. That's really important. And what about sign number 8? This one is also not talked about much, but it's really interesting. Increased blood pressure. Did you know that insulin also has an effect on the kidneys? Does it have an effect at the kidney level? What does it do to the kidneys? It increases sodium reabsorption. But along with sodium, water also comes along. Basically, just so you can note this down, okay? If you've been diagnosed with high blood pressure and don't know the cause, you also need to check your blood sugar levels, all right? Not just because they're related conditions like fatty liver, But there's also this mechanism, this action of insulin, which isn't talked about much, isn't well known, and often helps explain a lot of what's happening to you, okay? So, high blood pressure can also happen at this stage of prediabetes, and how do you reverse this? What are the steps? What are the measures you need to take to change this? Is medication recommended at this stage? Or are there some behavioral measures that are more effective? I'll tell you right now that yes, there are, but I'll leave a video about this. The steps to reverse this change in blood sugar levels. Remember, this doesn't replace a doctor's appointment, but it will help you a lot with plenty of information. If you want to watch this video, click here and you'll be taken straight to it. Take care. See you next time.